As opposed to last time. Glad somebody's recording that.
Always remember me.
I'll be back for
One, just got trying it out. Or two.
Hey Tyler.
Really?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you're having a fantastic day. I have an absolutely amazing day so far, so I'm going to go and make that contagious aspect on. If your day was just moderate up until now, I'm going to go and make it better. If your day was already fantastic, I'll upgrade it to amazing. If your day was amazing, I can't do anything for you. So, what I'm intending to do is the following. I'm going to give assignment number 4 graded back at you, which also means we're going to go to the online portal and look at how you're currently doing. The max score you could have gotten in the class up until now is 55 if you would have gotten a flawless score all throughout, which means you take your total score that's being listed, so let's say your score is a 39, a 42, whatever it is, you divide it by 55, you know your current percentage aspect in the classroom. This assignment is out of 15 as it states on the bottom, but just so that you don't freak out where you're going, this is out of 20? How bad did I do? It's out of 15. If you want to know your exact percentage, take the score being given, divide it by 15, and you know your percentage and your corresponding grade. As I hand it back, my intent is to give you guys literally just the luxury of look over it, not to be shell-shocked, not to actually be overwhelmed, just to look at it. Overall, I was darn pleased with the quality of what we've seen, and I believe as a student in the class, you have to admit that you saw some pretty darn good stuff. So as I hand back the paperwork, I give you guys about a minute to just play look over it as I get myself ready. Then I want you guys to have your books on standby, your notes ready, so that we can go and rock the information that you're going to have, because this is the last full formal lecture in our class. Full formal lecture, because as we go into the next phase, we're going with Veterans Day, persuasive speeches, Turkey Day. For those of you that are actually not into Turkey Day, whatever holiday you happen to either not or be celebrating, I'll be gobbling, and by definition I'll be stuffing myself with some delicious food. And by definition for you, then we come back to persuasive speeches. Last day of class for full lecture, I'll give you a cheat sheet study guide for your final exam, because I believe that you would like to have it. And then we're going to have the final exam, which as a precursor is not 3 hours. It's not 2 hours and 50 minutes. The record is by definition to be synonymous with how long the midterm took. Which however means that don't plan your ride to be picking you up at 40 minutes just because you were banking on it. If you plan on a solid hour, you should be in fantastic shape. The average is about 35 to 40 minutes, so that you know what you're in for, because there's no way I'm going to kill you with a final exam that's 2 hours and 50 minutes long. That is not only not reasonable, I'd like for my students to not lynch me on the last day of meeting with each other. So by definition, I thought I should tell you the good news before I have you guys go with the, is it 3 hours, is it, no. And in case you're wondering, your colleague is exam absent because he can't be in 2 places at the same time, and he actually recruited his friend, who's not even in this class, to get a camera, to videotape on his behalf, to be able to go and make sure that he's being up to date on the information. The reason I thought that was cool for his friend is because if you have a person that's willing to go and have your back but not even being enrolled in the class, I think that's pretty sweet. But by definition, in case the camera's going or something's wrong, then he's also proud of the classmates that are enrolled in the class and making sure that he gets the information, which is equally cool. So as we hand back the assignment, it's in no particular order of scores or ranks. I'm just going to give it back to you. Awesome. Amanda. Catherine.
If Tyler were
Personal
here.
interview with
Tyler.
Tyler.
I'm sure he'll enjoy that. At least he knows he was being thought about. Oh. Pass this back to Edgar, please. Nicole. Nathan. Arlene. Marissa. Katie B.
I wanted them to club team, but I don't think I'm allowed to.
Right.
So I'm not free, but, and like they don't make your feet cleared for
Taryn.
intramural, do they?
Katie, do you mind passing it back to you?
No, just like, I know you have to fill out for club, because you like travel and stuff.
Tyler.
Would you want to?
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah?
I love
Should
it.
I see? 'Cause
Costa?
I wanted to describe, I just have to. Is there one next?
Emily.
Yeah, I have one down there in the
I realize
I
I
don't
didn't
really know
care
exactly.
package that. So by definition,
Okay, we should
Annabelle? Eight. Last but not least, Carly. All right. Have a quick look at it, then have your books out, have your writing material ready. Let's get ready to get rock. Perfect, thank you. Okay. So as I've given you assignment number 4 back, you're contemplating over what can I do and how can I fix it and how overall can I make sure that I make changes. Wonderful. It goes away from your desk so that you're not distracted for the time being. Please, I'm aware that I'm giving you a handout at the beginning of class, which violates speech rule number 1. But it's not a handout because I don't want you to really look at it. I want you to know I have this, I will look at it, but for the time being it just goes away. And we're at a stage where we've been scaffolding our various elements of skills, which means that we've had assignment number 1, which was our reflection of, hi, I know my colleagues and I know who they are. Then we had the aspect of a self-reflective assignment, which is where we came across the matrix. And I said, I will use the matrix how many times? 3. We've used it twice so far. So we'll obviously have to use it a third and final time, which is going to be today. So as we go down this path of having actually a recollection of where we are, the synergy of the course, where the amalgamation of everything that we've done so far comes together. The reason I like the word amalgamation is the only time we've probably usually heard the word amalgam is when your doctor says, do you want a white filling or you want to have it, you're going, I have to have a filling, all right, amalgam. And it means bonding, meaning things coming together, synergy. And this is where we have assignment number 3, where you interviewed a person and not a single person in this class can have the luxury of raising their hand and saying, no, in my field I talked to an expert, this is not relevant, this is not applicable. Nobody has the luxury of making that claim. And then we got to the point of you essentially becoming an educator and saying, I had with due diligence the opportunity to research the subject matter that I was given by my own choice after a proposal, and I finally reached the plateau where I can draw from the speech component of assignment number 3, improvisational speaking, impromptu speaking, something less than 3 words for a Q&A component as a preparation, and I finally have the chance, because it was so annoying on assignment number 4, I finally can state my opinion. No, that's not what assignment number 5 is at all. You can never ever state your opinion in a presentation on an academic level because that's not what assignment number 5 is. By definition, it isn't that you finally get a chance to go, now I get to finally share my views of the world, and I can go and impose and indoctrinate my views. By definition, that would undermine the whole purpose of why I love teaching this course. Because if you say, I'd like to manipulate somebody and I can't wait to shove my views down their throat, hi Hitler, how are you? Because by definition, somebody might go, I'm a little bit logophobic. I'm a little bit worried about arguing with somebody. As a matter of fact, I find it to be kind of aggressive. If the person is in my face, I usually assume it's a really bad quality, they disagree with me, they're just kind of, I don't really enjoy it. That's not arguing. That's not at all what the definition of argument is, at all. That's literally a person being self-centered and self-righteous about feeling that what they do is more important than who you are, and that's completely the opposite. That's dictatorship. That's not what democracy by definition is. So I figured I owe you a clarification as a starting point as we go down the path of what refutational style reasoning is, how the fallacies come to fruition, and what to do with the Q&A, which are the components and what I request and require from you for assignment number 5. I know that I've told you many times in this class, generally number 1, don't start with a question, simply because it could permit, while it's interactive with the audience, for somebody to possibly not pay attention. So if you're looking at an advertisement and the person says, do you enjoy going to the Caribbean? And you're going, not really. That ad is completely useless. Or, do you have pimples? No, as of recent, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. No. And so the question might very much alienate an audience. However, your intent was to go and be interactive. And let me go and ask you a question for which I know the answer. And it makes sense in a brief moment. Can you raise your hand if you enjoy reading and spending time with things that you hate to do? Please raise your hand if basically, let's be more clear, who in this class, it's a much smaller group of people, loves the game of golf. Playing it, using it, enjoying it. Who loves golf? Okay. Who hates golf? Go up. Usually, by the way, we have 2 or 3, usually male, going, I like golf. And then usually we have 2 or 3 females going, The word hate is pretty strong, but if I have to use the word hate, it probably reflects me. And the thing that's interesting is, and I'm not saying, Dylan, how dare you, but let's look at it. If I were to go, Dylan, I'm going to give you a free, all-inclusive tour to Pebble Beach, all expenses paid. Now, by the way, and have the person that I would have resembled a few days ago, red attire, black pants, where you're going, is he Tiger Woods? No, I have no skill in that arena. But Dylan would go, yes, thank you. That sounds fantastic. Fair? Whereas the two ladies that raised their hand, they're going, please, please don't. But I might be able to sell it to do it. However, is it fair to say that that would be among the worst possible things that I could give to you because you're going, can you play soccer? That would be much better. Or, well, maybe you can replace my ID, but no, I don't want to have an ID that gets me to Pebble Beach. So, the translation for you as an audience member is, you don't talk the same language, but if I were to, for instance, say, I know that your colleague likes the game of soccer, so I can use that specifically. Ma'am, do you like the sport of swimming? Okay, it's my sport as well. I used to be on the German junior national swim team, and I'm a national record holder in the 100 fly. I kind of come in at about a 53.4. That's my time. Which, for those of you that are in swimming, compared to Michael Phelps, is horrible. Compared to the general population, not bad. Is that a fair statement, man? So compared to Michael Phelps, I'll go with the where's the motor and why my feet so small. And compared to the general populace, it's the hi, I'm here. Where are you? So. Under a minute, by definition, is not a bad starting point. Johnny Weissmuller, who played Tarzan, was the first person. Under a minute, then 55 seconds were awesome. Under 50 seconds, you're world elite. In the 52, 53, you're okay. So, if I were to say to Dylan, who might not love the game of, might not love swimming, I'd go, I can slice a handicap by 3 if I were to give you specific instructions on going swimming 4 times a week. He might not go with, I love swimming, but he'd go, okay, that sounds like a pretty good starting point, if that's genuine and true. And the same goes for if I'm saying, by the way, if you're looking at endurance in soccer, you're a defender, ma'am, is that your position? So if you're looking at your defense position, I can actually tell you that in a tackle, if you right now have a 4 to 5 percentage, so 80 to 60% of the time you're feeling pretty confident, I can increase your tackling average by about 10% if you play the game of golf in a certain way on how I instruct you. You might not necessarily initially believe me, but you're going to start to listen. Is that a fair statement? By the way, those I could follow up, I don't have enough time to elaborate, but those are actually true statements. I'll leave them for the time being standing in the room. It has an element to do where you can't use the golf cart, an aspect of endurance for actually practice and inherence, and for you it has an aspect of your swing and the elements of an equilibrium where you actually use a monofin and have an aspect of a better stance. So I'm not just bringing these up arbitrarily because I happen to have had the luxury of having had a PBA #1 level golf coach making that claim and statement, and I happen to know a German Bundesliga #1 league player that happens to make that claim, so I'm basing most of those statements on their statement. So, what it now means is you talk the talk of the person that presumably would disagree with you. And now let's look at the presidential elections that we just had. Were you to look at a person that's pro-Obama, they might look at CNN and go, yes! And a person that's pro-Romney, you know that they're disappointed, but they might look at Fox and go, yeah, what an ass the guy was that just lost. But they would likely not look at the media that is going to endorse the person that they felt was not the person that they endorsed. Because for the most time, we do something called self-evident truth by terminology. We look for stuff we enjoy. So if you enjoy Republican material, you're going to read, watch, and view Republican material. And if you go and look at the same thing for the Democrats, it's the same thing. So you don't even speak the same language. Because by definition, you don't want to see stuff that you don't enjoy. You don't enjoy hanging out with people that criticize you. You don't enjoy doing a sport that you're not good at. You don't enjoy doing something that, even though it means the term challenge is embedded, but you don't enjoy doing it perpetually because it's not enjoyable. But in debate, you need to know where the other person is coming from, and that's what refutation by definition is. Let me give you a point in case as we go down this route. You have to assume certain components of reasoning. So let's say this might be something you can relate to. I'm going to give you a very practical example. And even though I run the risk that I know that the cost of gasoline has gone up, I still believe that you can relate to this. And I'd like to have an identification by snicker or show of hands. Either one is fine. Snicker is the okay, chortle. You go to a gas station and you fill up, and you will be a person that I call an even pumper. So you fill up and it comes in at, let's say, $23.79, and you're going, 24. 24.01. Okay, I still make it to 24.25. All right, woo! Who can relate to that? By the way, not everybody in this class, because you're obviously looking at $5. If this would have been when the gas was cheaper, that would have been even there. But a good amount of you can relate to that, but a good amount of you cannot. Because you're going with, I'm not going to spend more money. And now let me ask you, Big oil, Exxon, Chevron, you name them. Do they love the people that are doing the more than those that don't? What do you think? Because you're going with, I have OCD, so Professor Mill is obviously in that category. And you're going with, I'd rather spend an extra 25 cents so that I have the even number. It's a lot easier to account. I can go divide by 25, divide by 2650, divide by, and for those of you that have done it, you're going, yes, exactly. It's really smart and really easy. And there's a campaign, and I'm going to reference you to the website, which is the SBCACD.org, which stands for the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District. So what I'm referring to next is not me telling you something and imposing it on you, but that's the credibility of the site that I'm using. And the campaign that is being referred to is something called the Don't Top It Off campaign. And the people that are behind it are Chevron, Big Oil, basically the companies that you just thought love the big topper offers. And let me clarify what the campaign's intent is. Were you to go and say, and having just labeled yourself as a topper offer, it says that up to half a gallon, cross-reference the site of this nonprofit, up to half a gallon, the moment you go past the release having come off on the pump, up to half a gallon, if you continuously pulling the trigger, the only thing that happens is the rolling of the number, but not a single drip of that makes it actually into your vehicle at all. So that's the equivalent of going, money! Yay! The second thing, though, that I find much more impacting is that it states that your probability of lung cancer because of the vapors being exposed after that trigger will go up by 700%. So now you're going, okay, so I'm wasting money and I'm killing myself. This is great. And then as we have that last component, that element of the drip that's contaminating the groundwater, which is the equivalent of a solitary drip contaminating 3 football fields. And this is probably where it gives you an idea of why Big Oil is sponsoring this campaign, because OSHA or EPA will be fining them $250,000 for each of those contaminations. So who do you think they hate? Yeah, that's right, the topper offers. Because initially you were thinking, those 25 cents. No, those 25 cents could be $250,000 fine. As a matter of fact, on the Central Coast alone was $3.75 million in a duration of less than 2 weeks. So all they had to do is spend $37 million in a campaign, and in less than a month and a half, they recouped the equivalent of $2.5 billion, or in a duration of an entire year, the entire cost factor of what currently the CSU is shortchanged by $12.96 billion. So that's reputational reasoning, where you're going, well, I thought the Sierra Club would be behind that, or some environmentally giddy company, and you're all of a sudden going, whoa, Big Oil is behind that. Didn't see that coming. By the way, one of the most successful campaigns of all time for having actually changed behavior. And so as we go down this path, what you're doing is look at the person that is least likely to argue. So if you have a person that is going to go and give you anti-Republican remarks, and that happens to be Sarah Palin, for those of you that happen to look at former Vice President of the United States candidate, that's a little unlikely, correct? But you should know that, for instance, in a presidential campaign at some point of time, we have 2 candidates, one representing the incumbent. By the way, is the incumbent, and I'm fully aware, I just gave you a kick-ass awesome example of politics, and not even more enjoyable presidential election, so hold on to your seats, buckle up, it's got to be exciting stuff. Politics, whoa, hold me back. I'm aware, because most of the students are going with, they're over with, so can we please move on to other stuff? I think the Super Bowl is pretty sure coming soon, and it's only a month and a half away, yay. So, at least presumably. So if you're looking at politics, there are 2 individuals, and I'm traveling back in time, and I'm parking us into the candidate's incumbent. Is that the person defending the office or trying to get the office? The incumbent. Defending, already seated. So it's George W. Bush, Jr., and by the W insert, son, running against the former senator of the state of Massachusetts, John Kerry. And by the way, the long drawn out component that this had is John Kerry at some point of time asked, pay very close attention, Senator John McCain to be his vice presidential candidate, who ran 4 years later for the Republican Party as the candidate. That's right, Senator John McCain of Arizona. So this is kind of interesting, huh? Imagine you would have actually accepted that job. That's the least likely person you would have expected to take that job. Is that a fair statement? Because you'd assume if you represented the party on the opposing spectrum, you're going, that can't be true. Okay, go ahead and research it. I'm not going to give you stuff just for the sake of argument. That would completely undermine the purpose of my class. But now let's go and park you into understanding what fallacies are. And I'll go and have you, for the time being, hold and pause this picture of John Kerry, George W. Bush on 2 desks at podiums, And we'll pause there and return back to them in a brief moment when I give the framework of you not having the assumption that the word fallacies is equivalent to something that is wrong. The word fallacy isn't synonymous with that's fallacious. That's not what the word fallacy means at all. And we'll have to go and analyze that with the perspective of, before that, having to apply the matrix for the third time. So we have a full-on, entire breath on what exactly is the definition of fallacies. Why do we have those two presidential candidates paused? And what exactly is the matrix applied again? Here we go. Collectively as a class, take a brief moment because I know that for a good amount of time I was seated in the back, we had colleagues present, so all of a sudden you're being asked to go read chapter 5, inhale it, your instructor's talking with you, not at you, but making sure that you're with me. What is in the spectrum of the matrix, which you remember having had to digest for 3 hours when you go and write that reflective paper, having used it a second time when I said that's reloaded and the words are good. And what was the first word that reflects the matrix? Go ahead. Oh, class, collectively, let's take that. I want to make sure that when I said I will ask you, you know the answer to this. This is the third and final time today that we're going to use this. So I want to make sure that I have this class rocked. I love my class. This is so amazing. First word is? Material. Nice. Second word?
Social.
Third word?
Spiritual.
Does it feel good when you know the answers? It has to feel good. And that's exactly where I want to be. I want to be at this class point where we're going, stuff is coming together. I know you're potentially a little overwhelmed. That's not my intent. My intent is for you to go, it's unraveling and not, it's coming apart. It's where stuff falls in place where you're going, that's learn by doing. This is starting to come together. I get it. I understand it. There are 3 different propositions of what a persuasive speech could be in accordance to chapter 5. And instead of asking this time, because I don't want to derail, and I don't want to be disappointed either in you or me in not having actually gotten this across, proposition of fact, proposition of value, and proposition of, what do you think the last one might have been? Class?
Policy.
Might start giving you an idea of, oh, that's why I had to have a policy. Okay. We're looking at, this is not coincidental. Let's draw where you go lines between connectivity. Fact, which one do we want to connect fact with? Absolutely. Which one do we connect value with? Pay close attention.
Spiritual.
Yep. And policy?
Social.
Social. If I were to ask my students, hey, what do you think is the most difficult type of persuasive speech? Most students, by track record, will say this has got to be the most difficult. Because, I'm sorry, Professor Mail, no disrespect, just being very honest, being very blunt, I can see how a person, even if they were trained by you, and I respect that they may have been ethical and all that, I can see how a person can speak for 7 minutes and change what I believe in. I want to be very clear. We know that in this room, between 18 to 25-year-olds on that side of the room, which culminates you, there's no way, Professor Mail, that a person can speak for the duration and will basically shatter what my friends, what my family have basically reinforced and what I believe in. I don't believe that that's possible. That has to be the most difficult type of speech. And I can see where you're coming from, but you're wrong. Let me explain. The reason that would make logical rationale is because you're going with, well, I know who I am, and I know what I stand for. I even reflected that in the Matrix paper. I know what is important in my life, and if somebody's challenging me, at best they can get me to think about stuff, but it's not going to change me. If you were to take an advanced argumentation class, which technically picks up exactly where this course is supposed to end. So for instance, if you take argumentation, advocacy, comma, writing, if it's in the English department, which is an A3 requirement, or one of my classes, which is a 126 or 226, the upper level forensics classes. I like the word forensics because it means technically investigation and, what's the other word?
Research.
Yeah, research. You know I love research, and today you will definitely get an affirmation on why. Although I believe I've been perpetually demonstrating on why. But I'm going to go and have that sink in even more potently. You look at, well, if I were to say, make a choice, I will give you about 20, 40, 60 examples in those debate classes on what the value component is and why it's not something we would have. But today I'm going to just give you one, and I would say, make a choice on a beverage. Let's say you're in a restaurant and you make a choice. Would it be Pepsi? Would it be Coke? You might go, I don't really care. It's not a big deal to me. It's not important. And the advertisement industry is going to spend a really good amount of money to go, this one is cooler, this one is better. But overall, you're going to go with, you can't tell me taste. I'm sorry. I know what I like and I know what I don't like. And I don't like when it's not colored, and I don't like when they mess with it, and if it has a cherry in it, I'm not buying it, and if it has 0 calories and it's black, I might, and I don't overall need to be told what to do because I know what I like. If it tastes good, I like it. If it doesn't taste good, I think I don't like it either. So that's fair, and it can make sense where you're going, there's no way you can go and convince me. You can't do a persuasive speech. And the part is, yes, unless I switch it from a taste preference to health. Where you're all of a sudden going, oh, type 2 diabetes, elements of being impotent, or not being able to actually have a child of your own at all. By the way, each of those comments are not arbitrary. They actually studies link when the Food and Drug Administration says this is what will happen, which is why we have to have certain restrictions. The terms Coca-Cola and cocaine in the 1900s is a prudent element of you being actually potentially impotent, and having our population growth as a projected number of, in the year 2012, would we have not restricted it, at 30 million. What, by the way, is the population of the United States as of a couple of weeks ago? Why would we have brought that up a while back ago if it wouldn't matter? So it's in the 310 million category. You get the gist. It would have been if we'd have not regulated that specific component down to 30 million. That's 10%. That's where you're going, okay, that sounds persuasive. Which by definition isn't all of a sudden something about choice and preference. It's about, didn't know that. And that's what essentially supposed to be refutational reasoning, where you go, you have two extremely well-prepared arguers in principle, in public discourse. And one person is saying, I'm going to bring up arguments, and I can see what the strongest argument from the opposition are, which is why I had said to you, you need to research what you don't want to hear. The first thing you research is, if you don't like golf, everything about golf. If you don't like soccer, everything about soccer. If you don't like swimming, everything about swimming. So that you can speak the language of the person. And by the way, the first thing you research is figure out what are the arguments you're up against. So it could be that you're figuring out in that process, oh geez, some of it I can't make go away. But there's a big difference. The credibility of the research matters. You can't just simply say, okay, here is the director of the National Institutes of Health, and this is what my grandpa always said. Unless, by the way, your grandpa used to be the former Surgeon General of the United States, it's irrelevant. By the way, we will often trust people that we trust simply because we trust them for other reasons. But they're not experts by some means. There might be myth. There might be elements where you come back from school and go, well, I actually learned, just eat it. But I took a class. My professor told me I need to research. Okay, I'll eat it. Behavior is the most difficult thing to change. But if you're looking at this framework of doing a persuasive speech, you have the person going, today I will persuade you that my position is correct, but I will have considered all the arguments from the other side. The other person does the same thing, and when you're sitting there in the audience, it isn't the intent for the person to go, when I'm all said and done, I've manipulated you so much that you're going with, you are holier than thou, and you've brainwashed me, and you're my master. That is not what persuasion is. The definition of public discourse is as an audience member, you're going, I'm kind of feeling torn, as if somebody's talking on both sides, and I can see really good arguments that I know right now that I have to go back and learn more about the issue because there's an awful lot of stuff I don't know. That's what democracy is supposed to be. The freedom of the First Amendment right, where you have the luxury of a person that you don't agree with being allowed to speak up for the sake of widening your horizon, permitting you to look at things that you otherwise would have not looked into, enabling you to have the luxury of being able to educate not only yourself but the general audience, to include everyone as part of the thought process. That's the definition and the core of democracy, the exact opposite of what propaganda is, which is the precise opposite of the one scorn mark on the history of my proud nation, which would be the history of Germany, where you have some dumb-ass losing idiot that stands in front of a crowd with a mustache, black hair, and looks at the audience being Austrian and says, the typical German is tall, blonde, and blue-eyed. And I would have been in the front going, yes I am, and you are? And I would have gotten shot because there's something called the spiral of silence. You can't speak up because you don't know who might kill you under the fascist movement. But I'm sure I would have gotten shot because I would have been the smart aleck going, yeah, I know, I'm 6'5", that's 2 meters, and you are Aryan because I don't quite understand how, I'm sorry, you seem to have an inferiority complex, dude. You seem like a little nuts. You and Napoleon seem like really good buddies. And while you get that sarcasm, there's a person that's being manipulative, brainwashed. That's not what persuasion is. That's the exact opposite of persuasion. That's single-handedly saying, I researched what I know I'm right, and I'm narrow-mindedly going and telling you what I know and what I'm right about. That's the exact opposite of persuasion. That means that you didn't do research. That means that you're narrow-minded, selfish, and all about you. What a persuasive speech should be is about the audience with the ability to demonstrate why you came to the conclusion of your research being the logical final product. That's what persuasion is. That's why I love research, because the difference between bigotry and narrow-mindedness and research is permitting you to never say, I already know everything. There's not a single person on this planet that can make that claim. So, as we have that resonate, you start getting a feeling why I love research, because I absolutely love democracy. I love the ability to have the pride of our nation literally being not torn by somebody going, well, either you're Republican or you're Democrat, but having the opportunity to go with, but I get a chance to vote and have an impact and make an educated decision. And now that means that there are politicians that might be trumping out and say to you, when you listen to me, how do you filter? How do you know what they're saying might be right or wrong? And how do you know that it's not just compassion? How do you know that it's not just hearing what you want to hear? And here's the part. Fallacy analysis. If you look at your book, this gets us full circle to, again, the presidents being framed, us knowing that they're not necessarily the general public being in extremes. People are not generally extreme. People are either apathetic or don't necessarily know. They might go, I feel about abortion a certain way. I feel about the death penalty a certain way. But it's their gut instinct, as opposed to, I don't know, I guess in that case I can see, all right, okay, I didn't know that happened. And when you backtrack going, okay, I haven't thought about that. Some of it is cut and dry for certain people. You're going, that's not consistent with my religion. That's not consistent, which is why we don't do a speech on if God does or doesn't exist, because that's not a persuasive speech. That's a completely different category. And there's no way I can grade you on that. That would be completely hypocritical. We can't also do a speech where we talk about just facts. That's not consistent. But as we're looking at fallacies, the core definition of a fallacy is not something that is factually wrong. There's something missing or absent. That's the definition of a fallacy. Something that is not there, missing or absent. If you're looking at Lego blocks, there's literally the equivalent of, if I were to give you 100 blocks, where somebody might build a tower that is this tall, and somebody else might build a tower that is this tall, but this person has done it where they have a big base, and a couple of pieces in the middle missing, and it's kind of here. And the other person did it what you believe to be flawlessly perfect, but if the goal was to accomplish it to be at this height, they each fulfilled the goal. We all have different things that are important to us, which means for some of us, some things that are missing are not important. If I, for instance, say, I'll see you guys again Tuesday next week, and somebody's going, what do you mean by Tuesday? The day after Veterans Day, when we have a long weekend, the day following Monday. How do you know that the day after Monday? Okay, we're using the Gregorian calendar as established in 425, which means that we have a 365-day scenario, which means that we have a leap year, and then when we go, what's a leap year? Oh God, really? It's not the year of the monkey, we're not Chinese, so let's just move on. And by the way, that's where something might get defensive, but 3 layers down, where you're going, what exactly is a meter? Well, according to Wikipedia, which is where you sometimes look up stuff where you go, I don't know that. And it seems so benign, but once you get into the complexity of, I don't actually know why we have a House of Representatives. I don't know what an electoral college really. I don't understand why we only have a bipartisan. I don't. Shut up. And most of that we don't know because we generally go with the. I'm pretty sure that we can all agree that Sunday is the day before Monday, and then we have Tuesday, and we have a 7-day week. And yes, I'm sure that we have established that at some point of time. But if you and I have a meeting at 11 in the a.m., oh God, after Meridian, okay, 11 in the morning. Shut up, Neil. I don't need to justify everything in my life. True. This stuff we just take for granted. And so that means some stuff is important, some stuff is not. And what you do is you filter on what a person says to you. If a person comes up to the podium, and that's where I'm getting very close to the two presidents, and the person is at the podium and they say in the speech, what many scientists have found, what's the first immediate gut instinct, neck hair going up, going, what did they not say? What scientists and what research? If you're going, well, my mom and my sister both have tested many cookies and they've come to the conclusion that this is the best cookie. Okay, that's not researchers. But most of the time, you will, by the way, say, I've read somewhere in a newspaper, because you're not going to say, well, my roommate's brother's sister watched the television program and they kind of told me about this, and I read it on Facebook, so it must be true. You're not going to say that. You're going to try to find a, I think they said this on 60 Minutes. I don't know what 60 Minutes is. but it's a credible source. Which is how you justify stuff when you ever, I read this somewhere. Where did you read? I don't know. But we make do, and if the person says, in accordance to many scientists, can you name the scientist? In accordance to a doctor from Harvard, why is that person relevant? That's exactly it. What are they not saying? So if a politician says, I will do this, what is exactly what you're not being told? How are you doing that? So if you're looking back at the two politicians, so those are the things you're investigating. Let's have those two politicians, and I have the luxury of knowing both of the speechwriters for them. So I am fully aware that having the luxury of time, that this isn't coincidental, but they are both there. I'm not going to emulate this speech pattern. And George W. Bush has twin daughters, and the night before they were in the VMAs on MTV helping out with some kind of award. This is a debate about national and foreign policy, and it's sort of a lull where they've just had the intonation. It's kind of a moment before they get to the next topic, and Kerry says, well, I saw your daughters the other night. And then Bush responds with, yeah, kind of a handful, but we sure love them. Barbara and I love them. They're just the greatest joy of our life. Well, Teresa and I have already learned how to deal with our kids, but they're tough to handle. Yeah, some kind of snicker, shoulder shrug, moving on to the next thing. Students in the category of 18 to 25 were being asked after the debate, hey, who do you want to vote for? Collectively, 90% of them said, we feel that Kerry is a better father figure, more statesman-like, and the person we want to vote for. What do you attribute that to? Well, he's better, he can definitely handle his kids better than Bush. Now, the writer said at any given point of time during the debate, make it obvious that you're more experienced and have more knowledge. By the way, I should echo the same speechwriter did for Mitt Romney in the debate, where Mitt Romney said, I have 4 sons, and I know when a son says to me that something is wrong. Same speechwriter, same person, not coincidence. The intent here was to use something that's called a straw man fallacy, a small argument that presumably is not relevant, to actually establish something much more potent. Nobody in the debate talked about family. Nobody in the debate talked about parenting. Nobody in the debate talked about statesmanship, which is funny considering it was about foreign policy. The word, how would you be a better statesman than your opponent, was never brought up. Yet, when looking at those nice graphics where you go, when the students were going whoosh and whoosh, that was attributed to that one moment of what was looking like just a dialogue. And this was completely